Alright guys, so in today's video I'm going to break down the changes that I've made and how to work with this altered version of the item system. So the difference is not really that much. We still use data assets and we still store the stuff in the data assets. There have been a few changes though. So I'll go ahead and start with this. I did cover this in the video where I turned these into components, I believe, but just to make sure, I'll go ahead and cover it anyway, because there were some things that I discovered while I was working on this last update. So for one, the AC held object master, that's going to store stuff that's relative to handling the item itself, obviously. Now, you'll see that we do have this auto setup replication and the replication mode. It's probably not really that helpful. I'll go ahead and explain to you. There is one prerequisite. You do have to have replicates checked. And all that is really doing is it's setting replicate movement. And then it's setting up the physics replication mode right here to whatever is selected. And the default is the resimulate, which was introduced with 5.5. So it's pretty new. I believe it was 5.5. It may have been introduced in 5.4, but I think that was 5.5, this last update. Anyway, the physics disable delay, that's how long it'll take before the physics actually gets disabled. The item ID is how we identify it. The display name isn't actually used, but I have it in there because there was one person that I created a custom UI weapon selection system for, and he was utilizing this display name alongside the gameplay tag. So that's why I created this item ID with the gameplay tag and the display name. So that was being stored in a character, in an item data asset before, but I did away with that, and I'm just having this stored here because there wasn't enough, it wasn't being utilized enough to justify having a data asset specifically for that information. So I moved that over into here. The handling itself, this is how things get attached and equipped. You'll see the aim socket name. That's the socket name of the muzzle. In fact, I think that, yeah, so that actually exists on here. So I do have it on here, but that's mostly for the aim stuff, which exists on both the AC gun and the held object master. I provided that on both. So that's the AO debug tool. So I went ahead and added that to this. That's the reason why you see that. So this is mostly for checking to see where the item is aiming. There may be some use cases outside of guns for using this, which is why I included it. But it does require the aim socket name, which is basically just a socket at the end of your rifle, or item, that lets us know where you want the line trace to be ran from in order to get an accurate trace that's relative to where the gun is pointing, as you can see there. So that's what that's for. Let's, if I can find, let me just do this. So I'll go ahead and go over the prerequisites here, but you can go to the actual masters and check out to see what I'm doing in here. As I've said before, choosers, I can't reference choosers. Unfortunately, it's not a feature. So maybe they'll add that later, but given that it's not currently a feature, I somewhat doubt that it will ever become a feature, unfortunately. So because of that, I actually need this to be handled on the actual actor, because otherwise you would need a child of the AC held object master for every item that you own. So I thought that was kind of odd. I thought that would be a kind of odd way to handle that. So instead, I just have this. If you go to class defaults, you'll see this BPI items. It only has a few functions in here. We are not using the get item mesh, but it's there and it's hooked up in here just in case you ever need to directly reference the item mesh, such as like for synchronizing. And I might add that in a later update to the AC held object master, where it will be able to handle the item animations and synchronize them with the character animations. So that will be a feature I will add. So let that be known. Right now, that is not actually really hooked up. So the get item char data, that's the character data that's relative to this item. And that's being grabbed from this pure function right here. And you'll see over here, we have override this from child. I wanted to make sure that was clear to you guys, so I made it in big bold letters. This is just a child class, it's a function that's meant to be overwritten by the classes that inherit from this class. So if you don't fill this in, you'll see this message and it'll remind you that you need to add your character chooser, your character data chooser. And that will be on the actual object itself. So if you come over here, you'll find that char data chooser function in here, and you'll just select it. It's not going to show up in here because I've already overwritten it here. But if I were to say, for example, on this one, I did not override it. This one's a child of this one, and this is a child of that one. And I did that because all the guns are going to have this AC gun component, and that's where this is at. And it's just using these events to fire that. So if you go to the class settings, you'll see the BPI guns is in here, and that just has a fire and reload function. Just makes it easier for us to, trigger those without actually directly referencing it. I probably actually could have just had it a function that says, get AC gun component, and then it would have just returned to this, and we could have just called that directly off of it. That probably would have worked just as well, to be honest, but I don't think it's really that big of a deal. For one, because some people probably won't want to use this, but they may still reuse or extend this blueprint interface. That's the reason why I did it that way for this. I'll cover that here in a bit. So if we come over here, you'll see we have this char data chooser here, and we can overwrite that. And just in case you didn't know, by default, it looks like it's already going to automatically add this. So if you just did that, then it wouldn't do nothing. It would actually just print this. So this is kind of redundant. You wouldn't actually even include that. You would just put your chooser right here, hook this up into the input, and then hook up the output to this. So that's all you would be doing. You can delete that. So I'll be reverting this even though I saved and compiled it, but anyway. So yeah, so the AC held object master, what it's going to do is it's going to look in the data asset under the montage map, and it's going to look up the entry for this gameplay tag, and it's going to return the animation that's associated with it. So if we come over here to the the character data chooser, and we open this up, you can come over here and open up this data asset for this character, and you'll see we have these montages here. This is a map, and it looks up these montages via gameplay tag. And that's very efficient when compared to using an array. And with an array, you would have to iterate through every entry in this list and check to see which one had that gameplay tag. But with a map, it doesn't actually iterate through it. It'll just automatically go directly to the one with that tag. So it's going to save a lot of performance. So it's important to know when to use maps versus arrays. In this case, it makes far more sense to use a map. So yeah, so you'll see we have this equip.handr, and that's associated with this montage. And if you open up this montage, you'll see that I'm excluding the weapon bones. And what that is for is by default, whenever we're playing montages on this animation system that I created, what it'll actually do is it'll actually override it normally overrides the Gasp like weapon bone locations with the weapon bone locations for our overlay. But if we're playing a montage, sometimes we don't want that. So because it'll actually override the montage weapon bone locations with this as well. If you're using this, actually is not relevant if you're using IK retargeted characters, because we do not attach things to their weapon bones. We attach them to sockets. So you'll see this one has a weapon bone right here. Now the thing is, why don't, like I have it set up so that the characters that do have weapon bones that are being IK retargeted, why don't they just retarget this bone and not have to use sockets? Well, it's simple actually. There's anatomy related issues relative to that, which will actually not place it in the correct location for that character. It would place it in the correct location for this character in relation to the size of his hands and how he would hold it. But if your character's hands, like if the length of this part of his hand is different, or if his fingers are different lengths, or if they're spread out more or whatever, then it's going to end up with his fingers not grasping it right, or the grip of the rifle will be inside of his hand, so on and so forth. So that's the reason why I used sockets for them instead of just retargeting weapon bones, and for the ones that had those. So that's basically the breakdown on the exclude weapon bones. That's why I have this curve. And you can add that by adding a metadata. So what is a metadata? It's a curve, but it has a solid value of 1. So that's what a metadata is. It's a curve that has a solid value of 1, a constant value. So in some cases, like disabling things and excluding things, so on and so forth, it makes much more sense to add a metadata. And I believe that they're actually more performant than curves because they're not keyed across the timeline. It's just one solid value. And so I think Unreal Engine is smart enough to know to just like only evaluate it as a solid value rather than trying to like maybe interpolate. I'm not entirely sure the details of that, but it's probably something along those lines. But yeah, so anyway, going forward, the disable hand IK, what is that for? So normally, like when we're layering, we want the characters offhand to stay positioned on the item. If we don't disable this, then when we start blending into this animation, it can cause issues where we're blending between the hand IK locations, which is the virtual bone locations. And so where the virtual bone would be on this animation versus the overlay animation, it would blend between those and kind of like slowly move it from one target to the next. So for example, if his left hand is right here on this animation, but on the other animation, his hand is over here somewhere. Then when we start blending into this animation, that virtual bone location would start interpolating this way, you see, during the blend, depending on how long the blend is. So if you go to the asset details, that's 0.2. That means over 1/5 of a second, it would be blending. So that's the reason why I disable hand IK on that, because it's not actually needed. Not if you have things done properly. So if the hand placement is proper for this animation in relation to this item, then you don't need hand IK. So it also reduces that. So anyway, so we have this attach, and if you right click, that's a montage notify if you move over it. If you go to add notify and you scroll down, you'll see a montage notify. That's a built-in feature of Unreal Engine, and it gets fired when you play a montage using one of those timer nodes. I forget what they're called. Let me go over here to the AC held object. Let me close all these tabs. There's so many tabs open here. So if we come over here to the montage canceling, it's a latent function, which basically means, that it's time-based, and these events will fire at specific times during the animation. So if you use this play montage, a latent function, then right here off of on notify begin, this will fire whenever that montage notify starts. So yeah, this is kind of like a tutorial too. So this is just a one-off, it'll fire one time. But if you go to notify states and you say montage notify window, well, now it has a beginning and it has an ending, you see? So it'll start here and it'll end here. So if we come back over here, when it starts, this will fire. And when we move beyond that last part of it, it'll fire this one. And it'll return the notify name right here. So if you come over here and you select it, this is your notify name right here for this notify. And it also displays it right here after you name it and then save it. If you name it, it won't change automatically. You'll have to save it and then it should change right here. So that's what that's for. So if we come back over, the reason why I say that is because if we come back over here and we select this, you'll see that we have an attach hand R notify name and an attach hand L notify name. And this is what I named them, but you may decide to change these names, which is why I have these exposed. Also, with the gameplay tags, you may decide you want to use your own gameplay tags, and you may wish to change these. So as I said before, these gameplay tags are just looking up the montages within this map right here, based off of the key that you gave them. So one thing to note is that we have a dual one, and I'll go ahead and show you that. Let me just close out of some of these. If we come over here to the pistols have a dual. And you'll see they have a hand R, a hand L, and a dual. So if you open up the dual, you'll see it has two notify events. Now these can happen at the same time, but normally when you're doing stuff like this, your hands don't actually reach the same place at the same time. Not in real life. Even if it's just a subtle offset, there's normally some amount of offset between hand, so it just makes it feel a little bit more realistic if they don't both arrive at the same time. That was my perspective anyway, but you'll see this one has the attach handle for when the left hand, this one right here, for when this one meets the target. And actually it reaches the target on frame 13, but I put the attach one frame later because that's when his hand actually starts moving up. And then right here on frame 14, you'll see I have the attach handar. Same concept, and you'll see I'm disabling the hand IK in that. So you'll also notice that I'm playing this on two different layers, and this is an approach that allows us to additively apply it on to the body and then override the upper body. So that prevents the lower body from feeling like it's out of sync with the upper body by allowing and this should have been called a lower body additive. I think I said I was going to rename that, and I may. Let me know if that's confusing to you guys, but this is the lower body additive right here. So the additive is applied on the lower body. Actually, it's applied on the entire body. So, and then we just play this on the upper body in mesh with a mesh space rotation blend. So that's a technique I got from Lyra, and it's a very good approach to getting good fidelity in blending in your montages. So how did I do that? It does add some extra memory footprint. You'll see this is 185 kilobytes. And so I actually just duplicated it, and I made this one additive in local space. And I chose the frame. I didn't just randomly choose a frame. I chose the frame at which he was in the idle stance. So normally when you make animations, you want it to start in the idle, in your animation's idle pose, because that's the pose he's most likely going to be coming out of in a lot of situations. So moving forward, that basically covers the AC held object master and how that works. These are the events that are handled by this component right here. The on task finished will fire after it. Like if we're handling one item, it'll finish after we handle that item. After the item is attached and the montage has finished, it'll fire the on task finished. If we're handling two items, one after the other, then it'll fire after the second item has finished its montage. Otherwise, it'll also fire if we cancel out of it early. So I'll cover the animation canceling and the act of skipping animations or not skipping them. I'll cover that in a little bit. The AC gun. So I'll go ahead and cover this. So if you enable this and you go back into the game, and I actually haven't tested this in some time, but yeah, okay, it still works. Then you'll see it'll show you the offset. So the green is actually pointing down the barrel of the rifle. The blue is actually pointing towards where the projectiles are. My bad. The blue is pointing down the barrel of the rifle. The green is pointing towards the center of the screen. So when we shoot, we have a recoil animation, and that recoil animation will throw that accuracy off a little bit. The numbers you see printed in the upper left, that's the offset. That's how inaccurate the gun is in relation to the center of the screen. Now I have this enabled. I'll have to look into this because I don't think that's supposed to be hooked up. I don't think that's even hooked up. And I said I was going to improve that so that it was more readable for this update, and I forgot. But I've already pushed the update, so I'll have to do that in the next update. Ignore those missing things. It's because I removed code, and for some weird reason, it's hanging on to some of that data somewhere. So if we go into the basic projectile function, you'll see we're firing this right after here. So anyway, yeah, so this is the camera rotation stuff, the camera-based projection. It's not even hooked up because you can't replicate that easily. So I currently have that disconnected. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little confused as to how you're supposed to handle things in relation to the camera during replication. I have not actually had time to look into that. I'm not sure that data is actually replicated, so you'd have to replicate it yourself. So the projectile aim rotation. So if we look at this is the parent mesh. So this is the parent mesh's right vector. And so this, like these items, like the pistol and the rifle I have in here, their right vector is actually their forward vector. It's because I oriented them kind of like in the same way that normally you'll see items in Unreal projects oriented, which actually ends up meaning that their right vectors are their forward vectors. Kind of weird, I know, but the same thing applies to character meshes in here, as you'll see right here. The forward vector, and this is a little confusing to me. I think I knew at one time and I kind of forgot. I'm not 100% sure, but the X vector is actually the forward vector, even though that, like, if you're in a preview and you're looking at the mesh, you're looking at it from this angle, and it's actually facing the Y direction. So if we open this up, you'll see that its forward vector is actually the Y vector, but inside the game, it's actually the X vector, it's kind of confusing. It's mostly because I guess there's a lot of legacy code in Unreal Engine, and I guess they never actually reached an agreement or something on what should actually be the universal forward vector or not. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of an oddity in Unreal Engine. So yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm getting the rotation of that in world space, which actually indicates the forward rotation of it in world space, and that would be the rotation of that, which means basically that if we disable projectile aim rotation, then it will mean that we'll be shooting down the barrel of the gun. The projectiles will go straight down the barrel, not towards the center of the screen. However, right here, it'll go towards the center of the screen. Somewhat. It'll follow the rotation of the camera, but the camera is at an offset, which means that it's not distance based. Things that are close up, it'll look offset. So if you want to add that distance based stuff, maybe I'll add that later. At the time that I made the distance based, I didn't really feel like going in here and adding it to this one. I'm not gonna lie, I stay pretty busy, so I don't always have time to, go out of my way to do stuff like that for you guys. But I'll try to remember to do that, and I'll add that into here. If you go over to the character blueprint, you can go to the event graph, and you'll see that on this tick, we have this distance-based aim offset. And yeah, it's a monstrosity, which is why I didn't actually feel like bringing it over to the guns whenever I made it. But yeah, this is how you get accurate aim that's based on distance, not off of a world rotation of your camera, which is offset. But yeah, you shouldn't actually need this if you have a first-person shooter game. But with a third-person shooter game, the camera is offset behind him and off to the side, which adds a degree of error. So when you're just simply using the control rotation. Okay, so moving forward, the aim socket name, that's how we calculate the facing direction of the barrel itself, like where the barrel is pointing. That's how we calculate that. The projectile offset, that's an offset forward in front of the muzzle that we will offset this projectile when we spawn it. I offset it because I didn't want it to look like it was coming, like I didn't want it to be clipping the barrel whenever it came out, because the projectiles are actually, they have a larger diameter than the barrel. You could scale them down, but yeah, so anyway, these action tags right here, these are just related to the action that we're going to be taking. So if we come over here, you'll see that we're just grabbing this montage via that. And again, that's just grabbing that from a map using that key, which is a gameplay tag. And that comes from here, comes from the same data asset. So if we come over here, you'll see we have that weapon fire, and this is the fire montage for that. And yeah, that's a Lyra animation, and I have not modified that, guys. So he doesn't actually hold it the same way, but it still looks, it doesn't, because of the way it was designed, you can still play additively, like, and that's what I'm doing, and it'll still look right. Ideally, I would like to make custom animations for everything, and maybe eventually I will, but it's going to take time. I don't have infinite amount of free time on my hands on the side. So that basically covers that. So I'll go ahead and cover some more of the basics. So if we come over here, you'll see on this actor right here, I've got a static mesh set as, so the root of these actors, they need to be either a static mesh or a skeletal mesh. And the reason why is if we come in here, if I can find, let me go back here. So on begin play, it's going to get the owner, which is this actor right here. It's going to get that, and it's going to store a reference to this. That's the first thing it's going to do. And then it's going to get its root component, and it's going to cast it as a primitive component. A primitive component, the two things that inherit from a primitive component that I'm aware of are skeletal meshes and static meshes. I don't think anything else inherits from that. And so it'll store a reference to that mesh. And that's going to be whatever you assigned as the root. And why does that need to be on the root? Well, Unreal Engine has physics replication, but the physics replication, in order for it to work properly, the physics has to be replicated on, it has to be simulated on the root. If you simulate physics on a child of the root component, it won't replicate it properly. It'll look choppy, which was what you've seen in earlier versions. That's the reason why I had to switch over to this method. So ideally, I would like to have a way to swap this out dynamically via like a data asset or something, and I did try that, but there were all kinds of problems with that because in reality, that is a limitation of Unreal Engine. It does not want you to dynamically alter this stuff. The way that it's designed is in C++. There's a C++ on construction event, and that fires before the blueprints construction script event. And Unreal Engine expects you to have assigned any components to this before the blueprint is executed, which is why I can't dynamically change the root, unfortunately, because it causes serious issues. Trust me. You can try it if you want, but good luck. So anyway, we have this pickup sphere. I've kind of covered this already, but I'll cover it again. You'll see that the object type here is just pickup, and it's ignoring all the trace channels. So we don't need to actually trace against it per se. What we're actually doing is running a trace for an object type, and we're just looking for an object of type pickup. So you'll notice that the static mesh, if you check the collision settings on it, it's an object type item. And the reason why I have items, and the reason why I do that is so that we can tell it to specifically ignore other items. Why do we need to do that? Well, if you attach, it was the easiest approach to solving a problem. There may actually be a better way, and I may look into that later. But at the time, this was the most obvious way to approach solving that problem. So this is how I solved it. So when we holster a pistol in a pistol holster, and then we drop the pistol holster and it simulates physics, if we do not ignore that item's collision that's attached to it, then it'll cause problems with the physics. And it'll cause it to start spiraling out of control and floating up in the air and shooting off into the stratosphere. So I don't think that's what you want. That's the reason why I have it set up like this. By default, I'll also have it set up to ignore the pawn. And the reason why I do that is because there's some kind of quirky problems in relation to player object collision. And in order to just avoid that for now, I just have it ignored because I don't actually know how to resolve that. I don't have a lot of experience messing with physics in Unreal Engine. It's not something I do every day. Okay, so we've got all that out of the way. Now let's talk about montage canceling and skipping. So if we come over here to our character, our sandbox character, and we select the AC slot manager, you'll see we have this animation canceling checkbox right here. And by default, it's checked. And if you uncheck it and then come into the game, and you can spam your keys, you can't skip the animations. So you'll see it's not skipping the animations. You see? So if you don't want the animations to be skippable, you don't want to be able to cancel the animations, then you can just check that right there. The problem with that is too, though, is it creates more problems other than just that. Well, actually, no. Never mind. Okay, I have that set up so that it'll bypass that. I forgot. Sorry. Yeah, so it'll still work. Okay. Yep. So you can uncheck that and disable animation canceling if you want, and it shouldn't cause any problems. If it does, let me know, and I'll look into it. But I have not seen any problems relative to that. I thoroughly tested this without animation canceling after the refactor and fixed all the bugs that I found before I introduced animation canceling, and then fixed all the bugs it introduced. So right here, you don't need to worry about this char tag right here. It fills that in automatically. That should be actually, oh, I wanted to make it private. Actually, I should put it under a private thing. Yeah, so in the next version, it'll still show up in here, but it'll show up under a sub category under management. It'll say private, and if you extend that, it'll say char tag. That just means that you don't have to worry about that, about setting that from here. But I need it to not be private because the MetaHuman blueprints, they actually have to change this dynamically during runtime, which is why I don't have it set as private. All right. So animation skipping. All right, so I'm just gonna close all those. And I'll go over that. Okay, so if we come over here to the traversal, yeah, so there's this auto equip function here. And you'll see that by default, it does not skip the equip montage after we come out of that. But if you uncheck play available montage, then it will not play the available montage. So if I do that, you see it didn't play the montage. But if we come back in here and we check it again, then you'll see he plays the montage, okay? So somebody was complaining about that. I guess they didn't understand what I was getting at as far as animation canceling. It's going to depend on you, the style that you want for your game, and like, you know, if you want the character, if it's okay for you to have the character wait on an animation during certain events, then that's fine. You know, just enable play available montage if it's disabled in here. In this case, it's already enabled. But if we go over here to the DAO logic and we go to the pickup, you'll see by default, I have this disabled. So if you come over here and you pick up a montage, an item, and you have an item in your hand, it'll just holster that item in the holster and pick up that item. It won't play an animation. But if you check that, and you have an item drawn, then you're going to have to wait. The player is going to have to wait for them to put that away. Like I said, it's going to depend on the style of your game. Now, the problem with that is if you come over here and you press F, oh, he put the item away, but guess what? He's no longer close enough to that item to pick it up because we were waiting on the animation, you see? And I do a check after he puts the item away to make sure that the item is still within range. However, that's not a problem if you just skip the animation. See? So like I said, it depends on the sacrifices you want the player to make. So if you think your players are going to get aggravated by the fact that they can't pick up items while they're sprinting, then leave it disabled. If you think it's okay for them to get aggravated over that, or if you don't care, or if if it just doesn't fit the narrative that you're trying to push for your game, if maybe that's part of the feel you want for your game, you want them to feel like they have to do things properly, then you can just check that. It's just like that. It's just a switch. Okay. So it's not that big of a deal. Somebody was like really complaining about that. Like, I don't know. I guess they just didn't understand the fact that it's just a switch. You don't have to, it's not hard coded, guys. I made this as flexible as I could possibly make it. I tried to please everybody, but in the end, you can't please everybody. It's just that simple. You're never going to please everybody. It's impossible. I wish I could please everybody, but I can't. So the holstering, it looks like I actually didn't make that exposed for this. I need to expose that. In the next version, I'll have that exposed for this right here. Guys, it looks like I didn't expose that though. By default, it's just set inside of here. So, oh yeah, never mind. No, it's exposed. Okay, I'm just calling this function. Yeah, so if you want it to skip whenever we holster, if you don't want the unequipped montage, just uncheck that. And then whenever you're pulling the items out, if you don't want the montages to play, just uncheck it. You see, fully customizable, guys. Like, make it fit your style. I don't care, dude. I set it up this way because I thought it felt right, but I made it such that you can change it. So I hope that doesn't bother you. Apparently it bothers some people for whatever reason. Now, yeah, this item handling system turned out to be far more complex than what I thought it was going to be. So anyway, that's the rundown on how to work with this system. If you come over here to the AC slot manager, you'll see we have these item slots right here. And I've gone over this in a previous video, but I guess I may as well go over this in this one as well. So you have this stuff right here. Now, what does all this mean? Well, these are the slots that we can attach slot actors to. This is the socket name we can attach it to. This is the hand we want to use when reaching for something in that slot actor. This is the allowed slot gameplay tag. What this means is the slot actor has to have this gameplay tag in order to be attached to this socket. Otherwise, how are we going to know what sockets go where? You see, so that's our identifier. I should have called that slot ID. I'll probably rename that if I remember, but I get distracted by other things, and I often forget little, intricacies like that, which would improve readability. But I do add tooltips here, so I think maybe the tooltips will make up for that. So if you move your mouse cursor over that, you'll see the tooltip. If you go in here, you'll see, okay, so yeah, so this tooltip is actually on the structure entries themselves. If you go to the structures and you look for the tooltip entry, that's, or the description or whatever it's called, that's where you'll see that text. Yeah, so ignore this stuff. It keeps showing this. This seems to be some kind of weird serialization issue where it's just caching stuff that was removed and it thinks that it's supposed to still be there, but it won't break anything, so don't worry about it. So where does this get set? If we come over here to the slot actor here, we open up this slot actor and we select this AC held object slot actor. If you find this class, you'll see this is the class, and you'll see that this is actually a child of the AC held object master. It just has a little bit of extra code in here. It doesn't have a lot, so you'll see all that code right here. So if we come over here and we select that, then you'll see right up here at the top, we have this slot actor item info, and the slot tag, which is the slot ID, that's how we identify this slot actor and where it can be attached to on the AC slot manager. So you see. So this one is hip gun pistol M9, and this is a hip gun pistol M9. Now the accepted item tags, these are the tags of the items that we allow to be attached to this slot actor. And that's basically how it works. So no mystery there. So before you go to the starting section, and the starting section is where you actually add these. These are the items that will be spawned and attached to these item slots. So these are the actual slot actors themselves. And you'll see I have contextual anim scene actor in this one. I should probably remove that. It's not actually needed. I must have forgot to remove that. All right, sorry. So anyway, I kind of zoned out there for a bit. This is a long video. I tend to zone out whenever we're on these long videos. Yeah, so if you compile it, those messages will go away. It's a serialization issue. It'll just pop back up the next time I start it again until they fix it. So the starting items, these are the items that will be attached to these slot actors. And so if you go into the AC slot manager and you go to the event graph, you'll see that after some delay, and that's because the reason why is because if you go to this and you select one of these, what will happen is once you start it, you'll start with the UEFN, but then it'll remove that UEFN and it'll replace it with one of these. The widget itself will do that. Because of that, for this project, and because I'm not changing any of the Gasp stuff, I'm just adding a half-second delay before it actually assigns the owner, gets the character data, and then does this stuff. Now right here, I'm adding a short delay between spawning these, and that's because during replication, if you have these fire back to back, then it doesn't give the clients time for these things to actually be attached to them on the clients. And so these will end up being like on the ground or something underneath or something like that. I don't know. I think I had issues with that, which is why I added that little delay there. Timing issue is all. So right here, you'll see we assign the slot actors, and then right here, we search the available slots, and then we assign that information to the item, and then we attach it to that item. Otherwise, if there's not one available, then we drop it, but you could just have it destroy the item instead, if that's what you prefer. So yeah, that system turned out to be far more complex than what I had originally intended on it to be. I know I wanted, and I said it was just going to have a few functions, but it ended up having a lot. Unfortunately, I guess that's just the way that things go. Now, the holster socket name is the socket name that you actually want these items to be attached to. If you don't have that socket on the item, it's not that big of a deal. All it's going to do, if that's the case, is it's just going to attach it to the root origin of the item instead. And in actuality, this little holster socket name is more of a formality for these because I've actually offset the origins of these here so that if they were attached directly to the item, they would automatically be inside. And so I'll demonstrate that for you here. So if I just copy the location of this holster and I move this to that location, you'll see because I offset the origin of this holster, it'll just automatically place it perfectly inside it, and I don't have to worry about manually offsetting it. That's the reason why I did that. I'm going to undo all these changes after I'm done with this video, so you can ignore all the changes I've made in here. So the hand socket names, that's going to be the socket that we're going to attach the item to when we're attaching it to the character. When he's equipping it, it'll attach it to the weapon L on this character. Otherwise, it'll attach it to the weapon R. Now, if we go into so if we go into the DAO folder and we go into characters and we go into, say, Echo, and we select the AC slot manager, you'll see that the hand socket names for this is held object L and held object R. And so if you open this up and you look through, you'll see the held object L and the held object R and it's set up on the hands. Now I don't have offsets to these, and the reason why is because the IK retargeter data actually stores some stuff in here. Oh, my bad. Somewhere in here. Oh, it's okay. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, so over here, you'll see we replicate this with the notify now. In the last version, or in previous versions, we were just executing this after assigning that, but I felt like in order to reduce error on you guys' part, I would just have this inside of the notify. That way it always gets updated after that gets updated. And if you go inside of here, you'll see right here, we have our held object offset, and it's just getting that offset from that PDA, which is on that data asset, and it's offsetting the relative transform of that actor by that amount. Now, this does cause a slight issue because of the way I'm doing this. And so, let's see. If I switch to this, you'll see it. And I'll look into this. Yeah, I want to make sure I wasn't in replication mode. So, yeah, so you'll see that just for a single frame, sometimes the items will kind of rotate and then correct over the course of one frame. And it may be hard to see in the video. I'll try to fix that in the next version. I know what's causing it, but I'm not exactly sure how to address it yet. Basically, it has to do with the timing of this in relation to the attach event. So when this gets attached to the character versus when this right here gets updated, that's what's causing that. I'll look into it. I mean, like I said, I just explained it to you, so I know what's causing it. I'm just not exactly sure how best to address that currently, but I will fix it. That only happens on them because they're the only ones that have this offset being applied. The actual UEFN doesn't utilize this, and so it's not a problem because it's using the weapon bones on the actual animations, and they're already in the correct place whenever that attach event fires, which is why it doesn't happen on them. So what I probably need to do is perform this offset before it gets attached, and that should fix it. Something else you need to know is whenever you're creating this, you need to pay close attention to how I did things in these template actors. I'm setting the IK retargeter on begin play, and then I'm updating the held object state on begin play as well. And by default, this is the held object unarmed default pose state, and this will cause the unarmed linked anim layer to be loaded initially. And that's an unarmed overlay, which gives her, which makes her arms look a little bit more feminine. That's the reason why she looks feminine. So, and that's stored on her IK retargeter data settings. So if we go to get character mesh, this is an overwritten function inside of here, just like I showed you before. You need to pass in that character's IK retargeted mesh. Otherwise, it's going to apply everything and attach everything to the base mesh. So this allows me to accurately get the actual mesh of the character and attach things to it rather than attaching it to the base mesh. That's why we need to override that. None of these other events do you need to actually worry about. Now, as far as like where that data for that character is stored, again, if you come over here to the items and you go to their character data, that's where I'm storing this. And it just allows us to localize that to the items rather than having all the item character data stored on the characters. I think it just makes a little bit more sense to handle it that way. And you'll see she is using the linked anim layer class. That is the same one that the UEFN uses. But you'll see that we have this anim set data here, and this is what gets loaded into that linked anim layer whenever that linked anim layer is assigned. And so these are custom poses that I created for that character. And custom aim, well, I think these are the same aim offsets I'm using on the other one, but you can swap these out with custom ones as well. I made all of this customizable. And these are the overlay settings. And I'm sharing these with all of them. But, and I've already went over this stuff in another video, so I'm not going to cover that. But I just wanted to touch base again on how the characters are handled. And I think that pretty much sums it up for this video, guys. I'll do another video that like really dives into all of this stuff on the AC slot manager and the AC held object master, but I'll just briefly cover it with you real quick. So we have the drop item data. This is going to make sure that this item is being held in the character's hand before it clears that item from the hand when it's dropped. Otherwise, if we didn't do that, then what would end up happening is he would still be holding that item, but it wouldn't be in his hand. And then we just call these events. This one's just a fail-safe right here, just in case you tried to handle something and it got dropped. If you bound to on task finished, it'll still fire. And then this data right here gets reset, and then this data only gets reset if the item is not if the item is not attached to this holster actor that it was assigned. The owner is cleared. We don't want that character to own it. because during replication, if so, then it can still fire functions on here. And functions that are fired on here will affect that character. It'll cause it to be attached to that character, even though it's on the ground, which is why I clear it when it's dropped. Inside of the item handling right here, this is where all the item handling happens, our attachment, and montage and canceling, and then our pickup, equip, and holster logic. So when you pick up the item, you'll see that we attach, we need the new owner, which will be the character actor, the attached socket name, which will be the socket on the character that we're going to attach it to, and the hand that's associated with that socket name. And then if we want to play the montage or not. Now, currently for the pickup item, I don't actually have montages, and I probably won't be adding that directly into here. The pickup montages will probably be played directly from the character blueprint, and it'll be a generic one, which will be added later. So that extra data that we're passing in here, that's so that we can update the item owner and stuff whenever it first gets picked up. And then we reset the item handling state, and then we attach it to the player. And then we fire the on task finished whenever the on montage equip event fires, which fires right here after we've attached it to the character. The hand state on the character doesn't get updated unless we're handling a single item, at least from right here. If we're handling two, then it'll be then this will fire after the second one is fired, and that will happen from the montage canceling stuff over here under handle attachment. And it'll update it for both the items. So if you come in here, you'll see I'm just creating an items in hand struct that holds both of them. Yeah, so going back, you know, we handle this stuff, and this stuff, and this stuff, and inside of these right here, you'll see how I'm handling that. For the unequip, and you can change this if you want, but for the holster, I mean, if they don't have a dual holster, then we'll see if they have a dual equip. If they don't have a dual equip, we'll see if they have a single holster. And if they don't have a single holster, we'll check to see if they have a single equip. And then we'll handle all that individually based on those circumstances. So I think that basically covers everything I feel like I need to cover for now. I'll do a more in-depth video on the actual breakdown of this event-driven system and how this logic works later, but feel free to come in here and look at it yourself. I've littered comments around. I probably don't have enough comments, but I don't think the logic is too difficult to follow. It's still pretty complex, but I've reduced the logic in here as much as I could. I'll end up having to recreate my flowchart for you guys so that you can look at it. I've got one up there on the Discord now, but it's kind of outdated because I've had to refactor this stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of logic in here. This is the animation, the primary animation canceling that you'll normally see whenever it gets canceled if you have animation canceling enabled. And this is how it's handled. And then whenever this on task finished event fires, it'll fire this. which is right here. And this is just going to ensure this gets fired, which does the same thing as this. I'm just caching those values so that we don't have to have those running all the way down here or all the way over here. All right, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Let me know if you have any questions.